why the juvenile courts were founded in the 1890s, basically in Chicago. But what we know now is why. And so the physical MRI differences between a youth brain and an adult brain are pretty astounding, and it's pretty cool that we know that. And so, so now we know why we all don't act the same as we did at 12, and thank goodness, right? But we know why. Like so brain develops back to front with your frontal cortex developing last, which is your reasoning, logical, your ability to reason in cold blood instead of hot blood. We're all still susceptible to peer pressure, but not as much as we were when we were, 12, 13, 14. So I think that's been, for me, the key development that we've seen in the past 10 years.
Thank you. So I agree with Erin that the science behind youth development has really been a critical part that has moved it. But I also think that it's sort of, as a society, what I've seen is we've educated ourselves about everything that's going on with respect to it, and we are taking more efforts to make data-driven decisions. We do it in the medical field, we do it in the educational field, or we at least get our best results when we do that, and we aspire to those kind of things. But one of the things that I always, when I think about the juvenile justice system, is I remember where we started. And we started with the acknowledgement, as Erin said, that youth are different than adults. And they should be treated differently because, and now we actually know the data behind it, 90% plus of youth age out of delinquent behavior. They, on their own, without any interventions at all. And when you start taking that big percentage out of the loop and you start looking at what's left, then you're looking at things like the effect of trauma on childhood development, and how now, even more so, how trauma affects brain development and that impulse control and those kind of things. And we have learned that being tough on crime and throwing youth into prisons has not solved our problems. And it's a very simple reason why. It's because we have these two systems. We have a juvenile system and an adult system. And when you have a juvenile system, I tell people this all the time, if we don't try to treat the issue now, why they are youth, if we just throw them in jail and open the door when they're 21, where do you think they are going to come back to, and what services do you think that they are going to have? You are not going to have the best outcomes for that, and those people are going to be back in the communities without any treatment, without a job, without an education, without any kind of community ties and those kind of things. So we've learned what works. We've learned to be smarter on crime, and we're learning, I'm not saying we figured it out, but we really have learned that. The second point I want to make, and then I'll turn it over to Chip because I don't want to hog it all, is that what we've learned, and I think this is a really loud message in Franklin County, I work with these folks all the time. I pick up the phone and call them, and they are there to brainstorm with me, to collaborate, and what we've learned is these are all our children. It's not just children's services children, it's not just the community's children, it's not just the court's children, they are all our children, and we have to collaborate to give them the best alternatives to succeed and to grow up to be healthy adults. And that is what underlies juvenile justice in Ohio primarily this time. I want to say primarily because I think Erin's right, there's some courts that haven't embraced it, but I really feel it across all of Ohio and across the country.
There's not a lot left to say, I think, generally. But I will say that I think taking all this information and really focus on the well-being of the kids that we're serving. And we put all the parts together, that's really what we're trying to achieve, is improving their overall well-being. We've looked at the history and the data that shows that our historical practices were not the best for improving child well-being, for making successful adults. And so as we take a look at that in child welfare, we're focused on how can we connect kids to families, in whatever way that's possible. The family may not look like what we're used to calling a traditional family, but it's what works for that youth. I see every day when I talk to youth who have moved through our system and have become successful, it's really about a a personal connection that they had with somebody who cared about them, was, consistently there. And it might have been a neighbor or a coach or a grandmother. And so, we really need to look at opportunities and how we can collaborate our systems to create a support system for youth to be successful. And so, I think that that's really the exciting thing, is that we're kind of all coming around at the same place as we learn more about trauma and the impact that has. We might be looking at a 16-year-old, but because of the trauma that they've experienced, developmentally, they might be 5 or 6. So when you think about the cognitive processing that a 5 or 6-year-old does versus a 16-year-old, it's totally different. So when we have a better understanding of that, how we look at serving them